So for those of you who have just entered, welcome to the summit. And for the rest of you, you know the drill. Gentle reminder, you will be muted. And if you have any questions, please type it down in the Q&A box so that our presenter can present uninterrupted. We'll go over your questions at the end of the presentation, as there will be a Q&A session for 10 minutes. So do take the opportunity. And any unanswered questions will be taken offline after the session. So let me talk about a little bit about Melissa. All right, so Melissa is a test team lead at Sage. And in this talk, you will learn what usability testing is, the 8 themes of usability, the tips and tricks to help you with your usability testing, and how teams need to be accountable for creating a usable product. Now, if I am wrong, Melissa, please feel free to correct me, but that is what I think is what you'll be talking about. So please, Melissa Fisher, I invite you to the virtual stage.
Great. Okay, I will just share my screen. Yeah, it's really great to be here. Thank you for inviting me today. Let's see if this shares. Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yes, we can see the main slide and the slides at the side.
Right, okay. Shall I kick this off then?
Whatever makes you comfortable, you can go ahead.
Great. Okay, I'll just set my timer so I know whereabouts I am in the talk.
All
So
right,
let's
sure.
Great, so I'll just kick it off then. So yes, hi, my name is Melissa Fisher, and today I am going to be doing a talk on changing the definition of usability testing. So just a little bit about me. So I've already been introduced really, but I am a test team lead at Sage. I've been doing testing for about a decade now. The last 4 years, I've been doing line management and leadership kind of stuff. And my background is a bit different. I did a degree in neuroscience, so that's all about the brain and behavior. So I kind of fell into testing and I haven't looked back since really. So let's go straight into this talk. So if you go onto Google right now and you type in what is usability testing, then you're going to get a definition that looks at evaluating a product by testing it on users. Testing it on users. So this is probably an explanation to me about why I've had, problems with, doing usability testing. In my past experience, I've heard things like, you can't do usability testing because you're not a user, or perhaps, wait for our UX colleagues because they're really the experts. So what I want to get across today is shifting left with usability testing and really creating, team accountability for it. If you understand the user frustrations that a user can get with a product, then you'll be able to guard against, poor usability in the future. So what are we going to cover? So we're just going to quickly cover what is usability testing to make sure we understand the definition of that. And then we're going to brainstorm some common user frustrations with usability. And then we're going to go on to the bulk of usability areas. So I've got 2 sections. I've got 8 themes altogether to go through with you. And I'm hoping that this will give you a really good foundation to then go on your journey with usability testing. And then we're going to just wrap up with a quick general guide to help you. So what is usability testing? So this can often get confused with accessibility testing, and they are 2 different things actually. So accessibility is about creating, access for all different abilities to your product, whereas usability means basically, is it easy to use? So I've got 2 examples here on the screen for you. So on the left, we've got a book called The Design of Everyday Things by Donald A. Norman. I'd highly recommend getting the book. It's a great book. As you can see on the book, there's a teapot, and it's got the the spout and the handle on the same on the same side. So I'd like you to imagine trying to pour yourself a cup of tea with that. You'd be quite close not to burning yourself. So this is a really great example of a poor usable product. On the right here, we have tomato ketchup. So this really brings back memories of my childhood, where on the left we have this glass bottle where I'd really kind of try and shake out the last bit of ketchup. My hack was really to get a knife and dig into, you know, the bottle and get that last bit of ketchup. But as you can see, they've evolved the product a little bit. So now we've got a plastic container. So it really makes, you know, getting the ketchup out easier. So you can see really how they've evolved the product to make it easier to use. So before we go on, I just want to brainstorm some user frustrations with a product. So what do you think some user frustrations could be with a product? What would they get frustrated with about? If you could put those into the chat so I can see your thoughts. I've also done some brainstorming as well, so I'll share that with you in the next slide. So yeah, it's giving you a little bit of time to think about that. So I'm just going to go on to the next slide now. I can get rid of that chat. So some common user frustrations could be that you're not sure what to do with the product. And a common one is, you know, you're waiting around. I think we're living in a modern time where we're expecting things to happen quite quickly, and waiting around is basically quite annoying for the users. Possibly it doesn't help you with your task, or you can't find what you need in the product. One common thing I see is reading long user guides to figure things out. I mean, if your users are doing that, I think you might need to reevaluate, you know, how easy your product is to use. Other things, you know, taking a long time to complete a task. And the ultimate really is you simply can't use the product, which, yeah, you're in a pretty bad state if that is happening. So now we're just going to go on to the bulk. So as I said in the intro, what I'd like to do is give you a really good foundation of knowledge and usability, and then you can take that off on your journey. So we've got two sections here. I split them out into four. If you can figure out in this talk why I've split them out into two groups of four, then just shout bingo in the chat for a bit of fun. So section one, we're going to have a look at four things: navigation, feedback, performance, and error messages. So navigation, what is it all about? So it's basically exploring and discovering information in the website. So I've just grabbed the BBC News website here, and as you can see here, there's quite a lot going on really. At the top, you can see a menu going along, your account and all those sorts of things. Then you see another menu at the bottom, and then even another one under that. So it is quite complicated actually. So it'll be interesting to have a task on here to see how quick you can find information on this website. But why does navigation cause user frustrations then? So you might not be able to find the information that you need, or it might be really complicated and you get lost throughout the process of finding what you need. And those two things, it really takes a long time to find what you need, and we've all got better things to do than trying to find stuff on websites. Another common one is that you can't find your way back on the website. Maybe you went forward and you think, oh, actually, I needed the thing before. So yeah, having some sort of functionality to go back is quite good. So what can you do about navigation? So what I'd like you to think about is just keeping it really simple as you can. Try and think about stuff in the refinement and design stage of things. Maybe you could draw things out as you're going, you know, drawing things out. Can you navigate back? Can users have the ability to do that? And as you're going through, do you actually understand where you are? or you're actually completely lost. Another thing I'd recommend is to have no more than 2 tiers of menus. And just a little bit about accessibility is for menus, just try and use your tab key to see if you can go through. If you Google accessibility shortcuts, there'll be loads of things online where you can try, messing around with your keyboard to see how other users would navigate around your platform. So we're going to go on to the second theme here. So we're going to be looking at feedback. So this is all about, let's have an example of a form perhaps. So you've got an input, maybe you're entering your name and, your email, and then you click submit. So the system is doing something with it, and then you'd have the output, maybe something like your form has been submitted. So it's really important that users understand what state your system is in. So why could feedback cause user frustration? You've probably come across it before, that sometimes you're doing stuff online and you don't actually understand what's happening on the website. It causes a ton of confusion, and perhaps if you didn't get a message back on that form to say it was submitted, you might keep on clicking that form over and over again. And so the user is kind of making a mistake there, and you might be having tons of requests to the database. So what can you do about it? So what you need to think about is that diagram that I shared with you in the previous slide, is to understand your inputs and outputs. Does your user, or do you know what the system is doing? So if there's a point where you don't know what the system is doing, have a chat with your team members about it. You can do some really creative stuff, like the error messages. You can use drag elements, you can enable and disable buttons, but it really depends what your problem is. So it's worth discussing with your team and finding out that creative solution. So, performance. I love Sonic the Hedgehog. I don't know if anyone else has played that game. It's basically a speedy hedgehog that runs around and collects coins and that sort of thing. Performance is really important. We don't want to have slow systems. So, slow systems, I think, as I mentioned earlier, that we're in a time where we want things to happen quickly. You might have been on, I don't know, Facebook or LinkedIn, where things are, really taking their time, and you just get completely fed up and you wonder what's going on. So we don't want to be bored like Alice here. We want systems to react quickly, and we don't want to get frustrated around slow systems. So for performance, what you can do, so I kind of find this quite difficult to do really early on in the cycle. But there are things that you can do, but I want to focus a little bit on exploratory testing and what you can do. So when you get the product, what you can do is explore around, and if something takes more than 3 seconds, note it down, because people want things happening in real time, and if it's more than 3 seconds, then that's not really real time. Other things you can do is take baseline readings. So like within each new deployment, you can check whether the performance is changing at all, and just get really creative about doing things to affect the speed. A common thing is trying to take up all the resource. So there was one time where I opened a tab of a website, I don't know, about 20, 30 times, and it just completely crashed the system. So that's always good. So just do some creative things. But yeah, you can discuss things in refinement and design stage to talk about, how you're going to develop the product, and have you thought about performance? It's really important. So now we're going to look onto a third theme, error messages. So this one might seem quite obvious, but I have seen time and time and time again, error messages that aren't quite right. So how I see error messages is kind of guiding the user through the application. So we've got a picture here of apple, and when you open it up, you have an orange. So it's kind of trying to expect the unexpected to help your users. So error messages, why do they cause user frustration? I don't know if we're all perfectionists, but I think often when we do something, we want to get it right first time. So, we want to do things we want to do things first time, and we want to do them quickly. And we kind of feel like we're being held back from completing our task. So, and also I think when you get an error message, you feel like you're to blame, which isn't great at all, is it? So I want you to think about being really kind to your users when you're writing these error messages. In the next slide, I'll just talk about what you can do there. So yeah, what can you do? So don't blame the user. So my number one tip is just be really kind to your users, because they've obviously done something by accident. So rather than you didn't enter a name and blaming your user, just be quite kind and think about, please enter a name. Often I've seen technical terms jump into error messages. Often developers are deep diving in code, and of course technical stuff is going to jump out. But what I'd like you to think about is supporting your team and your developers to create better user-friendly messages, really. So you can add 100% of value. This is our value as testers, isn't it, to point things out like this. Be clear, to the point, and concise, and it's really important to tell the user what to do next. You might have come across a something where the kind of user is blamed and you don't know what to do next, and it's really frustrating. And another top tip I would say is to make the notice visible. So I had an experience of where I completed a form out and I hit submit and nothing happened. So I kept on clicking the submit button, as you do. But then I scrolled up to the top, and what I could see is that I hadn't filled one of the fields out, which was really annoying. So a top tip is to try and refocus of where you need to fill out that field that they might have missed. I'm sure there's other things that you can do as well. Just speak to your team. So yeah, that's the first section. So we've gone over navigation. So we've thought about how we explore through a website. We've thought about feedback, getting your user to understand, what the system is doing. Performance, make it real time. And error messages, just be really kind to your user when you're thinking of that. And you can really support your developers in, championing really those user-friendly error messages. Right, so now we're going to go on to section 2. So we're going to have a look at learnability and memorability, which are quite interlinked. And then we'll go on to affordances and efficiency. So learnability. So this is all about how quickly you learn your software. I love this little brain running along. It really makes me laugh every time I see it. But why can poor learnability cause user frustration? So what you want to do is have a product that gets easier over time and quicker. If it's taking a long time to complete a task or doesn't become easier over time, then you've got poor memorability there. So what can you do in terms of thinking about learnability? So I've got a notepad here. So yes, get your notepad out. And I'd like you to think about answering these 3 questions in your exploratory testing. So how quick can you complete a task the first time? And then secondly, how quickly can you complete a task when repeated? So, the time should get quicker each time they try and repeat a task. If it's the same time or longer, then you might have an issue there. So it might be something to talk to your team about. And another thing, are there appropriate prompts and tooltips to help you? So at the beginning, I spoke about a frustration around long user guides. If you can avoid it, try and not, your users really don't want to be going in and reading all those long user guides to figure out what to do. If you can somehow have prompts and tooltips to help them and guide them through, then you're in a really good spot. So now we're going to have a look at a theme called memorability. So there's loads of types of memory. There's, long term and short term. But what I want to focus on here is looking at a type of short term memory called working memory. So this is a set of processes that allows you to store and manipulate that, temporary information. So why can poor memorability cause user frustration? So there have been quite a lot of psychology studies on this, and there's a great one by Nelson Cohen in 2001 that people only remember 4 items at once. So yeah, that's something to remember, that, for example, in menus and things, to have 4, perhaps only have 4 items. And another user frustration is that if it's not memorable, it takes a long time to perform a task. And generally people, want to get on with their task, get it done and go and do something else, right? So it can be a real frustration to user where they can't remember what to do in your product. And I think I've touched on a few times now about users digging into those user guides that, I don't know, you might have done it with I don't know, bought something, some furniture equipment, and you've had to read all the guides to figure out what on earth to do to put it together. So we don't really want to be doing that. So memorability, what can you do to, create some good memorability in your product? So I touched on it, I think, a little bit, but yeah, limit your choices to 3 or 4. As you remember, that, we can only remember 3 to 4 things in our short-term memory. So do remember to limit your choices. If you can't limit them, then consider how you can group them into 3s or 4s so that your users can remember the groups. Another one is to, it's easier to recognize and recall something. So you might have come across things in forms and such like that use autofills and drop down lists. So try and do the work for the user if you can do. And another top tip I would give you is to design with forgetting in mind. Again, using lookups or drop down boxes. I'm sure there's other things that you can do as well, but it's really to be aware of this frustration. And if you're finding your product is not memorable and things get easier over time, then just discuss it with your team, because they'll be able to help come up with some creative solutions to solve the problem. So another theme, affordances. So we're going to get our Sherlock Holmes out here and go into detective mode. So what we have here is a picture of a door, right? So that is the object. And then on the object, we've got a door handle. So the door handle is basically the affordance. It is the prompt on what can be done with this object. So with a door handle, we know to maybe grab it or push it, for example. So it's a real clue, and kind of a hint to your users of how to interact with something. So why can affordances cause user frustration? So there's an example here where we've got a door and we've got the pull text, and we've also got these shiny panels. So what do? Do you push it or do you pull it? So I would probably push it. It'd be interesting to know what you would do. I can't see anything to pull it. I just think the things are just a bit more prominent that you can see. Um, But yeah, I do have a bit of an embarrassing story. So I went to an interview one time, and there was this big button on the door, and I kept pressing it over and over again. And then someone behind me said, "That's the light switch." So I'd obviously been turning the light on and off, and I didn't realize the button to open the door was the smaller one underneath. But was it really my fault? There was no label on there. And it was interesting, actually. I did get the job there, but later on, months later, I did see someone add a label. So I just wonder if customers had complained, when they came to the office and they didn't know what to do. So this is why affordances are really important. So it doesn't cause a lot of confusion and making the user feel like they're to blame. So what can you do with affordances? So you want to make sure the affordance does the right thing. Is it kind of clear what you can do with like an element on your page? I've just got an example here of a button, of it being active or disabled. So, you can clearly see that you can click on that, but the other one is disabled and you can't click on that. So there's probably loads of things that you can do. Again, another top tip really is just speak to your team. I keep saying it over and over again, but we solve problems together in a team, and it's really important we just create that dialogue as a tester to, just flag things really. So now we're going to look at a theme called efficiency. So this is like how easy is it to perform your task? So we've got two gentlemen here, and one has a cube and one has, a ball to roll along. So the question is, who is going to get to the screen at the end the quickest? So it's probably pretty obvious, isn't it? So the guy with the ball is just rolling on through, and he's definitely going to win that race. So efficiency, so kind of user frustrations is that, again, that we want to complete tasks quickly, and they don't want to be a whole slog. You don't want to be sweating like that man trying to move that cube to the end of the screen. So my kind of top tips for this is to just try and keep things really simple. So here you've got a picture of a light bulb that's not on, and loads of wires, and you're just getting completely muddled. Whereas on the right, you can see just one string and the light bulb, hanging quite nicely there. So my advice to you is to really simplify your tasks. If a user has more than 4 steps to complete a task, you want to review what you're doing there and try and make things a little bit simple. Another top tip is to do everything on one page with everything in sight, because it just makes everything much easier if you can see it. So I'm just going to kind of finish off with a general guide of how to help you. So with usability testing, so one of the things that I want to get across is that you can definitely add value in terms of thinking about usability from the start. So I'm not saying don't get your users involved, but what you can do is really mold your product into a usable state before your users get it. And then you can work with your users to really refine it and make it something really great for them. So try and do things as early as possible. What I often do is kind of draw things out. So I kind of imagine what's going on and draw things out to understand how things would look. So, but not just only me, I would do that. Get the whole team to do it. So you can really understand, slow down, spend that time in your refinement and design stages to figure out what's what. Another top tip is just to write things down. That might be for you. I always have a notebook by the side. I often find something, when I'm testing something and it doesn't feel quite right, I would just make a note of it. because at the end of the day, we are humans and so are your users. They're humans as well. And if you kind of feel something's not quite right or you're feeling a bit frustrated with something, I can guarantee your user will feel like that as well. So yeah, just imagine stuff, write stuff down, and exploratory testing. I love exploratory testing, but yeah, use it to your advantage to explore and learn things. I think it's really important to write down your initial reaction when testing something, because over time you forget that initial reaction that you had. So it's really important to note that down and discuss it with your team. And yeah, finally, just collaborate with your team and your unit, right? And you want to solve problems together. So just discuss things with your team. I think as quality, well, test engineers, often, well, sometimes we, find a usability issue and it doesn't necessarily get fixed every time, but it's really important to articulate what your findings so people are in a better state to create that better usable product. So some takeaways from my talk is, yeah, when your users' needs are met, they're more likely to buy your product and to keep on buying your product. That's really important. I think I've given you a great foundation here, and there's a lot more out there in terms of usability and what you can do. Just speak to your team, or Google is great, or speaking to your UX department and figuring out how to make things better. And remember and share your initial reaction with things, because over time we do forget those things. You might have noticed new testers coming into your team and they notice things that maybe you'd forgotten. And as testers, do not forget your value with usability testing. You can add so much value here, and don't forget that. So a big thank you to QA Tech Talks for inviting me today. If you like this, go and find me on Twitter at fishoutthebox. I'm also on LinkedIn, and there's a recent book that I've helped to co-organise. It's all for charity, open sourcing mental illness. So do go and check that out. Yeah, thank you again for listening.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Melissa, for that wonderful presentation. We really appreciate that. And in fact, we're gonna go ahead with the Q&A session regarding your presentation. Are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
All right, very nice. So this first question that I got is, are there any tools to do usability testing? For example, website performance, website accessibility, and so on.
So I have never used anything in terms of usability, because I've found it's all about feelings, right? And how, frustration is a feeling. So I've never used a tool. I would be interested to hear if there was a tool. So if anyone knows of one, just put it in the chat or just ping me later. I'd be really interested to know that. But yeah, there is those web accessibility guidelines. They're really good. But there's also loads of different things online that talks about usability and more information that I've probably spoken about here. So yeah, I love Google. Go and Google stuff.
Nice. All right, guys, please, this is your opportunity to ask questions. So yeah, please utilize the Q&A box to input them. This next question that I got is, how much focus one needs to give, to be given, how much focus needs to be given on usability testing?
That is a really good question, isn't it? Because there's so many different quality attributes, and how do we fit them all in? But usability, I don't know, I can't give you a percentage, but I would just have it in the forefront of your mind. Um, we're not trying to make things perfect. We're just trying to create them, give it, make our product in a really good state for our users. So if you don't get it right first time, I just love agile in iterating, and adapting, and well, inspecting and then iterating and adapting. So you can really improve things over time. But I do believe that at times we're not focusing on it enough. And you should really understand that it does cause user frustrations, and people are going to go elsewhere. Well, your customers will go elsewhere if you don't focus on it. So please do consider it. I hope this has been useful.
All right, nice. This next question here is, when do you think usability testing can be done?
From the start. From the start, when you're thinking about what product you're going to make, why are you creating that product, and then thinking about stuff in the refinement stage, and trying to flesh out what you're trying to create. Is it going to be a usable product? So I gave an example of a kettle, didn't I? Well, a teapot, and it just if you thought about it, it just wasn't usable at all. So it's kind of common sense at times, isn't it? Because you as a tester are human, and you're going to be interacting with products day in and day out, not just on software and like cups and all sorts of products. So yeah, I hope that was useful, that answer.
All right, nice. This next question here is, does performance also include is performance also included in usability testing?
Wow, that is a great question again.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. I think it's an element of usability testing, but performance is a beast. And I bet we've got some experts here today in the chat that can do a whole separate talk on performance. I think it is seen as a separate quality attribute because it's really important. There's things that you can do, isn't there, in terms of getting concurrent users, which is having the same users do the same thing, or like ramping up your users over time to see the effects that it has on the product. So I would say it's a different kind of kettle of fish, really, performance. But it's really thinking about performance. It's frustrating when things aren't happening in real time, so you've got to just keep that in mind in your product.
All right, nice. Well said. This next question here is, can tester cover 100% usability testing, since there might be chances that being a human tester may miss important grid of any broken link to test?
Goodness, I don't know if that was a question, but if we could change that into a statement, I think whoever wrote that, you're awesome. That's a really great thought. And you're right, I don't think we are going to catch everything. But what I'm trying to get across is you don't want to leave it all to your users, right? You want to create your product and make it really, mold it into something really usable before they get it, so that then the users are focusing more on kind of like the edges and making it really smooth and molding it into something that they want. But don't just leave it up to the users. I don't think that's fair.
Yeah, fair point. This next question here is, you have you ever convinced to take wait, you ever convinced the stakeholders about particular usability test case?
Oh yeah. So, I don't know. At the beginning, as a tester, I was absolutely rubbish, to be honest, about trying to advocate for bugs. I don't know if anyone else feels the same. I would feel not listened to, bugs aren't, fixed all the time, and just get really frustrated. But I think over time, through my experience, I have learned that you've got to just answer some questions in terms of what value does it bring to the customer. If you can answer that and provide that information in terms of your usability matter, then it's more likely to get fixed. But it's kind of with any bug, really. Just figure out, why is it important to the customer? How many customers are seeing this? And use that as evidence. Yeah, I think I mentioned that I felt really frustrated at times when things don't get fixed, but I've learned, it's all about a balance. And what we're there to do as testers is to provide information and give everyone the information that they need to make decisions. And sometimes that means your bug isn't going to get fixed, and that is fine. Yeah, so I hope that has answered your
Yeah, well
question,
said.
whoever posted that. Yeah.
In fact, that person added a statement to supplement their question. They said,
Oh, I
in
like it.
most cases, product owners focus more on data they want and not usability. So, what are your thoughts on that?
Ah, that's a tough one. Well, it's all about using your influencing skills again, isn't it? So the product owner, I have often found, well, there are some really great product owners that understand testing actually. Sometimes it's a matter of education. So keep your product owners really close. Get to know your product owners personally as well as professionally to create that good relationship. I think it's all about stakeholder management, isn't it, with these relationships? And it's again providing the product owner with different insights and thoughts about testing. And, you know, our focus here today is on usability testing. So I would, again, just answer those questions of, you know, what value is this going to bring to the customer? How many customers are seeing this at the moment? And it I think you might feel the same as I have done in the past, like a little bit frustrated at times because the product owner doesn't focus on that. But as long as you are doing everything you can for the user and usability concerns early on, then I think you're doing a great job. So don't underestimate your value. Keep on going, keep on doing it, keep having those conversations.
Nice. All right. There is a question from the chat box, actually. Someone asked, can you please share the Lean Pub link in the chat? So, is that okay with you?
Yes, definitely. I'll just see if I can find it. So this was software testers from around the globe have each written a story about software testing, and we've got about 30 software testers on there. And the aim is that all the proceeds from LeanPub will go to the charity Open Sourcing Mental Illness. So they deal with mental health in the tech industry. So this is something that we chose as a team, the Testing Stories team. It's a great book. Yeah, do consider going and purchasing that. And let me know what you think of it. I'd love to get some feedback about what you think of it.
Very good. Getting feedback, that's already usability testing in itself. And yes, mental health is very important, so that's a really good cause. All right. We have a couple more questions and then we'll wrap up the session, okay? You good?
Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Danielle.
No worries. All right, so this last two questions. One is, do you need any test plan or strategy when it comes to usability testing? Yeah, do you need a test plan or strategy for usability testing?
Um, yes, I would say so. So, goodness, I haven't written a test strategy or plan for a long time, but it's definitely got to be in your test strategy, right? It's got to be, you know, usability has got to be on that test strategy so you can keep that in mind when you're testing. I think test strategies and plans have to be shared with the wider team so that they can see what is going on. So if usability is part of that test strategy or plan, then your team will know that usability is going to be one of the things that the team is going to be looking at. But yeah, really great question. If that person wants to reach out to me afterwards, I think I need to digest that a little bit more. I don't think I've got a complete answer for you today. Yeah, really interesting thought. I haven't had that question before.
Nice. Glad that we had a question that was thought provoking for you. We really appreciate. We're really glad that this session was also could give you that thought provoking thought process for your own learning journey as well.
Yeah, definitely.
All right. So this last question, and then we'll move on, is functional testing or usability testing? Which one is first, and why?
But whoever asked that, that is a really great question, and it's a really tricky one. Um, yeah, usability and functional. To be honest, do they go in parallel, would you say? Um, I think we've got so many quality attributes to figure out as testers. I don't know how we all do it. I think we're all amazing, by the way. um, but I don't really know the answer to that because I've always had this thought in my mind of what comes first. And I've never answered that question to myself. So I'd be really interested to know what other people think so I can learn from you as well about what you think. I think someone has put functional. I'd be interested in why you put functional over, um, yeah, someone else has put parallel can be done. Yeah, I think yeah, usability, as I said, can be done in the design stage by like drawing things out. So does that become before functional, before you can actually interact with the product? I don't know. It's another one for us to think about. I'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so guys, if you have any, it doesn't have to be correct. It can be your opinion. Feel free to put it in the chat box, and it's for everyone here to think about. You know, this is meant to be a learning session. So if you have any thoughts or opinions and why you think so, feel free to put it in the chat, and it's for everyone to benefit from. Melissa, is it okay if I share a little bit of what I think?
Oh yeah, go ahead. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, I don't come from this kind of background. I'm not from quality assurance or IT or software development, so I have very little knowledge in this background. But I do think ultimately it depends on the client and the product itself, because it's like the saying goes, it's not what you say, but how you say it. But just as well, what you say is also just important, right? So I think in some cases, functionality should be first, because if it doesn't work functionally, then we can't move forward. We can't even consider user testing. But in some cases, in certain products, if the usability is no good, even if the functioning is there, no one will continue with it. So I think ultimately it depends on the context of the situation. But yeah, I'm not from this background, so I may not know what I'm talking about. So everyone, please feel free to put your opinions in the chat box.
I think what you're touching on is that no one really knows the answer to everything, and we all learn together, don't we? So, yeah, that's really useful insight. I've learned something there.
All right, very nice. I'm so glad to hear that. All right, guys, we have come to the end of this Q&A session. So we're gonna start with the next session very, very soon. Before we end the session, is there any last couple of words that you'd like to say, Melissa, before we wrap up?
Um, I just hope you found it useful. Just let me know if you found it. I use Twitter quite a lot. You can find me at Fish Out the Box or on LinkedIn. It'll be great to connect and learn from you all. And just thank you to QA Tech Talks for inviting me. I've had an absolute blast. I've really enjoyed myself. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for being our presenter this summit. We really appreciate that.